Welcome to Crying Out Loud. I'm Dr. Laura Berman, and this is your grief companion. Join me to learn how to soften the pain, steady the nervous system, and connect to your loved ones on the other side. None of us were meant to grieve alone, so let's cry out loud together.
So I'm crying out loud, I'm not holding it in, I'm shrinking my heart.
Jason Rosenthal became known to millions of people after his late wife, best-selling author Amy Krouse Rosenthal, wrote the now iconic modern love essay entitled, "You May Want to Marry My Husband." She wrote it just days before she died from ovarian cancer. And in the piece, Amy did something extraordinary, in my opinion. In the middle of saying goodbye to her own life, she wrote a love letter to Jason, giving him permission to someday love again. The essay definitely touched hearts around the world because it captured something rare and deeply human, the kind of love that remains expansive, even in the face of devastating loss. But beyond and behind that viral moment was a real family navigating anticipatory grief, heartbreak, parenting through loss, panic attacks, and the long, complicated process of learning how to keep living after losing the person you built your life around. In his deeply moving memoir, My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me, Jason shares what happened after the world stopped watching. The quieter moments of grief, the loneliness, the guilt, the unexpected healing, and his slow journey back to her joy, to meaning, music, movement, and even love again. On this episode of Crying Out Loud, Jason and I talk about his body's response to grief, why and how old losses resurface through new ones, those hidden moments that can hurt the most, continuing bonds with those we love, and the complicated emotional terrain of opening your heart again after profound loss. This conversation is honest, it's tender, it's heartbreaking, and it's beautiful. And I think hopeful. So if you've ever wondered whether it's possible to carry grief and still fully live, I think this episode will stay with you. Jason Rosenthal, thank you so much for joining us on Crying Out Loud. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Now there's so much we can talk about, but I want to start with Amy. And, will you tell us about her? Obviously, for people who may only know about her viral essay on modern love, tell us about Amy. Who was she behind the public story? What was it like to love her? Tell us about her.
Well, I love that you're asking that question because, if you ask her mom, she always sort of says this, that, before all the fame, Amy was Amy, and she was an incredibly wonderful and kind person, good to everyone, did things for people without any expectation of anything in return, kind of lived her life the way a lot of us would like to live our lives, intentionally being kind to people. So there was that personal side of her that we all know and love. And both in her personal and professional life, she was also just this incredible creative force. Always, her brain operated in ways that I can't fathom, and that most people can't fathom. She would see words within words, and she would describe herself as her brain just working all the time, And so whether it was scribbling little notes on her hand, or writing a picture book, children's book that she was so well known for, or creating a short film, that there's a lot of them out there that she didn't do for commercial gain. She just did for creative necessity, really, and then there were all of her books, so she was an incredible person, both as a human being and as this person we know who's a public figure, So,
And super creative. Would you say that, I mean, I know you read this beautiful book that we'll be getting into in a minute, but would you say that you um are creative and similar or parallel? Like, how did her creativity dovetail with you in your love relationship or just in your family system?
in my personal life and in my family, I think I was creative. I was, for example, not many people know, I love to paint, and I've done a lot of painting in my life. I think I was creative with the kids and things like that, but there's not a comparison, right?
Do you
She
like
was,
did you do project? Like, did you ever, I know you share some stories in the book, but like, because it feels like you were very creative in your love together and the way you played together as a family.
that's very true. That's very true. I can talk about some of the stuff we did when we first met if you want to get into
Sure,
that
yeah,
now.
tell me a little bit.
Well, in terms of creative capacity, we, for example, we started this button business. We would go around to flea markets anywhere we were, whether it was traveling or here in Chicago, and collect, buttons and make jewelry from it. This is not something I had ever done before, but we did it together. We had a ton of fun doing it together. And we also had a t-shirt business where she was the creative department and I was everything else, the marketing and all that stuff. And she would either create these phrases or find really interesting phrases, and we made a business of it. It was actually really fun and kind of profitable. So things like that, that we did together.
And would she usually be the one? Because like I do this with my husband. He's a lot more pragmatic than I am. I tend to be like, let's do this. Was she the one that would sort of drive these ideas and then you would join forces and do it together? Or was it both of you?
For the most part, I would say, yeah, I'll give her
Yeah.
that credit. Yeah.
You give her that.
Yeah, I'll give her that credit.
What do
But
you
it's funny
think?
you say that about
Go ahead.
practical. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a funny family story of like Amy was just wanted to soak up everything in life, all of her relationships. And we were at my in-laws, for the whole day with the young kids, and kind of at the end of the day you're exhausted. And she said something like, "Oh, can we stop at so-and-so's house on the way home?" Like a friend of hers.
Mhm.
I was like, "Amy, we're going home. That's it." So
One more field trip, right?
yeah, soaking a little bit more out of life.
Yeah. Well, she definitely did that. And her modern love essay, which really went viral, it's now sort of iconic. You May Want to Marry My Husband. She wrote just days before she died from ovarian cancer. And she really did something, and I know, not just in my opinion, extraordinary. In the middle of saying goodbye to her own life, she writes this love letter to you, essentially, is what it feels like, giving you permission to someday love again. I mean, it's under the auspices of "You Might Want to Marry My Husband," but it felt like that's what she was doing, which, as a wife, like, my joke with my husband is like, I'm going to haunt him if he falls in love with someone else.
That's very funny. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I really would, but I may have to change that proclamation eventually. But when she wrote that, what was it like for you emotionally to read those words while she was still here, especially?
Yeah. So this essay was written, like you said, literally when she was in-home hospice, very, very ill, very, very medicated. And, would sit across the room from me on the couch, tinkering away at her keyboard and kind of take these little micro naps out of necessity from her illness and medication. And I didn't know what she was doing at the time.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you know? No.
No, I
Okay.
mean, I knew she wanted to do one final project, but I had absolutely no idea what it was going to be. And of course, she showed it to me beforehand. And this is going to sound maybe a little strange, but my reaction was, this is wonderful. And I hope you get it published, kind of a thing. Like,
Yeah.
she knew, first of all, exactly where she wanted it published, right? In the Modern Love column of the New York Times. And frankly, before that wasn't a section of the paper that I was drawn to, I didn't know
That
a ton
wasn't one
about
of
it.
your, yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, and living with a writer for so long, even a very, very successful writer like Amy, you never know, right? You could submit something and be rejected 20 times. Um, but of course, I gave her my blessing, and the essay was just so poignant and beautiful, and yet infused with this humor that she is so good at. How can someone combine those two things in such a beautiful way? But she did.
Yeah. And you said, you were like, okay, your first reaction was like, okay, I hope it gets accepted. Part of that might have also been because I know from having been with loved ones, not a husband or not a life partner, but, you're kind of in this mode at end of life where you're just like wanting to be supportive and you're in survival mode.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering as you've come back to it,
Mhm.
I'm sure how you felt like even after she was gone, like I'm sure you read it again. Like, how did your reading of it evolve over time?
Well, at the end of the essay, as you're very familiar, she left this empty space,
Yeah.
like this, and we call it like the blank page or the empty space, whatever way you might choose to say it. And I accepted that as a metaphor, not only for finding love, but for really reevaluating my life, which I think a lot of people do when they lose someone that's significantly close to them. Unfortunately, sometimes that's what it takes to really recalculate and, appreciate what you have and the limited time that we have on this planet to do something either meaningful for ourselves or for others. So that's what I did. Um, and I think that blank page definitely gave me permission to get back out there a little bit, to date and to meet someone eventually who I am really lucky to be with. So, yeah, I mean, without that express permission, to be honest with you, I don't know what would happen to me. It's so daunting to think about getting out there again after being with someone for literally 3 decades, your entire adult life. So, the blank page really, as I said, gave me some incredible permission to move on.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading it again, but leading up to this, I didn't even know what to highlight to read. There's so many beautiful little pearls, but
Yeah.
she says, if he sounds like a prince, I mean, how they have these things now where you can make a slideshow for your friends who you want to find love, and they have these events where people will do slide presentations on their friends who they want to fix up with someone,
Oh my gosh. No, I'm sorry. I don't know that, but
It's
that's
really
very
funny.
funny. Yeah.
But this
Yeah.
is like a version of that. If he sounds like a prince and our relationship seems like a fairy tale, it's not too far off, except for all the regular stuff that comes from 2.5 decades of playing house together. And, she talks about how you're handy around the house. And here's the kind of man Jason is. He showed up for our first pregnancy ultrasound with flowers. This is a man who, because he's always up early, surprises me every Sunday morning by making some kind of oddball smiley face out of items near the coffee pot, a spoon, a mug, a banana. So she really was touching into who you are and who you might be in love. Um, and, what a gift to be seen, by your partner and celebrated that way. Um, but also just that, I mean, from like I was saying, I wasn't joking. Like I really did tell my sister I'm gonna haunt him, like to have, and my guess is she always felt this way, not that she was visiting her potential death, as such a young woman before she found out she was terminal or even had cancer. But my guess is she was probably always someone who was not obnoxiously jealous and possessive like I am, and felt this way that it was an end of life. Like I do feel like a part of me, if I got to end of life or if I were diagnosed with a terminal illness, I might change my tune and say, okay, you can, I want you to be happy. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
but my guess is she was probably someone who always felt that way.
I mean, potentially, yeah. maybe.
Oh, no, you'd never
I don't.
discussed it.
No,
Yeah.
I mean that's interesting. No, I mean we. How would you have any other vision other than like seeing the future together? You know,
Yeah.
and that's what we had, and we were so looking forward to. People really stress about the empty nesting thing, and we were looking forward to it. We had a
Really
lot of
were.
interesting things we wanted to do together.
What were some of the things you wanted to do?
Just to do a ton of traveling, maybe live in a foreign place, allow her to pursue some of her um, dreams of doing like, creative programs in other cities and things like that.
Did you talk? I mean, I know you didn't know she was writing this until she finished it and you read it. Had you talked about this kind of stuff as she was entering hospice and getting toward end of life?
Well, we had many, many conversations when she became ill and was certainly terminal
Yeah.
about a variety of different things, including, what the heck am I going to do? How am I going to parent these 3 children? You're the most incredible mom ever. When she pretty clearly assured me that everything was going to be okay and that I was a good dad and it was going to be okay. So it's little, not little things, big things like that were very, very, very important to me in allowing me to sort of restructure my life and go on.
Yeah. And in your book, My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me is the name of the book. You share a lot, not only about your story and how you came together and your life together, but, obviously what happened at the end of her life and after she was gone. And I want to speak a little to that because I feel like there's so many listening, who have lost anyone, of course, but certainly a partner. And you talk about panic attacks, for instance, after her death. Can you share some about that? Because I don't think that is discussed enough, the anxiety and the panic, even though because we think, okay, so if someone dies suddenly, or if you're gobsmacked, but even if you're prepared, even if you've had time to say goodbye, even if a part of you is relieved that she's no longer in pain or, whatever our story
Absolutely.
is,
Hmm.
it still feels like a gobsmack in many ways.
Absolutely. Sure. I mean, now that I'm a therapist and I sit with people and I hear lots of stories about, sudden loss and all of that. They're definitely different categories, right?
Mhm.
But you're correct. It's just absolutely overwhelming in so many ways. And basically what happened to me is that I thought I was having a heart attack. I didn't know what was happening. So I went into my doctor and he ordered me a stress test right away and all that. And I didn't know what a panic attack necessarily was, but that's what happened to me. And it was grief induced for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Grief induced. And so you're doing therapy, you do counseling now. I know you have a foundation and you have the book, and now you're also, I did not realize you do grief counseling as well. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I head up an organization called the Bar Harris Children and Family Grief and Loss Center here in Chicago. And we've been around for this year 50 years. And its focus was primarily on seeing children that either lost a parent through, death or divorce, mostly death. But now we've expanded it to seeing adults and families as well. And it's just incredible.
How
Incredibly
many
meaningful
years
work.
have you been doing? How many years has the foundation?
I just graduated, I've been practicing for like 3 years.
Yeah, no, I meant the foundation. How long has the foundation?
Oh, and then my foundation that I started
Yeah.
in honor of Amy, that is now, believe it or not, in its 9th year.
Wow.
Amy will be gone 10 years next year.
Wow. It does
Yeah,
not, I
and the foundation,
remember.
yeah, the foundation focuses on early detection of ovarian cancer, as well as child literacy efforts. We've donated almost 400,000 books to kids in need all over the country and have issued a bunch of really wonderful grants to physicians to try and find an early detection test because there does not exist one right now.
I know, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping with AI that gets easier. But, one of the things that I speak to a lot and try to help people understand, and it doesn't matter. I mean, certainly with any kind of traumatic loss or trauma in general, but I think it's true just for grief in general. There is a version of you that existed before the loss
Mhm.
that no longer exists in the same way. All of us are changed. I feel like we become a different version of ourselves. That's not a bad thing, it just happens. But we become a different version of ourselves after going through the loss. It's sort of the loss itself transforms us, and the healing transforms us. And I'm wondering what your experience of that has been. The
Yeah, I think
Jason before Amy left and the Jason that has evolved since. How is he different?
no, I love what you said. It's so true. I think I'm like a sort of a fully transformed individual in many ways, and who knew, right? I mean, that is a gift also that Amy gave me, to be honest with you. I retired from the practice of law, a career that I got a lot out of, but didn't really find a ton of meaning from for many years before retiring. And I went back to school to get a master's in social work. I started the foundation, and I really think that I'm walking through the world in a more similar way that Amy did, and that is to really try. I mean, life gets in the way, right? But really try to appreciate simple things and little moments that we just sort of tend to walk by and pass over. And definitely with my work, I'm doing that, and hopefully in life as well.
Yeah, more present. I find also just like less tolerance for BS or small talk.
Hmm.
Um, and just like uh, everything that doesn't matter starts to burn away.
Yep.
And I think those can help if you're willing to work with those things and get the support you need, which I know you did. And you were so lucky to have such a wonderful, supportive family that was so fun to learn about in the book. That obviously helps tremendously too. But you also talk a lot about movement, in particular yoga. High
Mhm.
five to the yoga, because that has been a lifeline always for me too, especially in grief. But yoga and also live music. But
That's right.
let's just start with the movement part. Moving your body became a really important part
Yeah.
of your grief journey.
Sure. What happens, I think, to caregivers in general is that they completely neglect themselves. We
Mhm.
talk about trying to help them with self-care and all of that, but really they just they're pretty laser focused, as I was, on being there for the other person.
Yeah.
And so, like after Amy died, I'm like, God, I don't feel good, and I lost a lot of weight, and yeah. Anyway, so yes, I tried to get back into yoga certainly and physical exercise, and I ended up with a woman who is a yoga teacher now, so still continuing the yoga practice, um, and so yes, I think it's really important to take care of yourself. Absolutely.
And the music, I feel like music and movement are both really important healing allies. I mean, I know you were into music before, but what role did that play?
Well,
Um,
I am a little obsessed with live music. I'm not going to lie. um,
what is
it
it
was
that you love
interesting.
about it?
Say it again.
What is it that you love about live music?
I mean, just first of all, the communal experience of being in one place and sort of literally moving, with a group, a community of other people who are just generally and genuinely happy. There's a lot of
Yeah.
joy in those venues. Um, and live music is just incomparable to listening to something that you're streaming, right? It's just so different. There's a band I like who puts out albums, but then you go see them and they're like 15-minute songs, It's just a
Mhm.
completely different experience. And it was interesting because one of the things I did write about this in the book that I did kind of right after Amy died is I'm like, I'm going to do something that maybe she wouldn't have done with me. And I decided to do this trip to go see a band I love, and I put an email out to a bunch of my buddies. And this year will be the 9th year that we're continuing to do that exact same trip. So, yeah.
What did they call it? Like
the Heal Jason tour.
the Heal Jason tour, right? I was going to say, let's help Jason, but Heal Jason tour.
Yeah, they had t-shirts made and everything. It was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
And, the other thing I want to get to finding love again, too, because I feel like that's a really important part of that this conversation. But before we do that, one of the other things you write about in the book is the grief, because this is important for people to understand, too, the grief that comes up later when other grief happens, like when, in your case, your father died later on, the way, I always say that grief loves an open door. So as soon as you are grieving anything, all the old grief is like, woohoo, anything I haven't processed is coming forward. So how did that reopen or reconnect you to the grief around Amy's loss?
Well, it was sort of like I describe it as a pile up on the interstate. I lost my dad, my father-in-law, my beloved dog of 14 years, kind of all in a row.
Oh,
And it's kind of weird to say, I guess, but it's nothing really that compares necessarily to losing Amy. My dad was older, my father-in-law was older, my dog was probably at the end of his life, but these things tend to, smack you back into grief, right?
yeah.
As grief operates, in my opinion, not in any linear fashion, right? It tends to come in these oscillating waves, and we can feel good for a week and then get smacked back into that old place. And I think that's how it went for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes sense, especially when new losses come. You also talk about the grief of those tiny, ordinary moments, around the smack back, as you're referring to.
Mhm.
I remember you talking about something as simple as being asked for an emergency contact, filling out that form.
Oh,
So,
just got the chills. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
tell
Emergency
us about that.
contact and yeah, exactly. Are you married or single on the form, right? There's no space for a widower, so that kind of stuff was really very difficult to navigate. And it
Yeah.
does blindside people. They're not ready for it.
Yeah. Who's your emergency contact? Are you married or single? Yeah. All of those things that we don't think about moment to moment that just bring it all home. And, you were talking or writing about how at some point you were sort of made this shift where you realized that the future, could not only be about dwelling on what you lost, which was a tremendous amount,
Mhm.
but also appreciating what you had. How did you begin to make that shift?
Boy, I wish I could give you a really good explanation. It
Or how
really,
did you notice it internally?
yeah, no, I mean, it puzzles me is my point. Like, how do we find resilience?
Mhm.
I don't think it's clear. I know many people have written about it, but I don't know how I found such resilience, honestly. And sort of came really out of a shell almost. I was just this lawyer with my head down. If you Google Jason Rosenthal before this happened, you would find like another guy downtown whose name is also Jason Rosenthal, so yeah. I'm going to get back to your question though. What was your specific question?
Just how, when you noticed that shift begin, or how what you were aware happened internally that helped you shift from dwelling on what you had versus what you lost.
Somebody who is like a very famous public figure found that essay and found me and said to me, and this was pretty early on, who had been through a sudden loss of her spouse, said to me, "You will find joy." And that's hard to hear at that moment, but it really
Yeah.
stuck with me. And when I went like out to a concert by myself, which I did, and I found myself kind of, getting back out there and grooving to the music and having a good time. I'm like, oh wow, this is happening. Maybe I feel a little guilt about it happening, but it's happening. So little things like that began to emerge.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point. One of the things that I try to stress to grievers all the time is that we can actually hold grief and joy at the same time.
Exactly.
And it can feel like a betrayal,
That's right.
starting to feel joy again, much less, in a case like yours where someone has been widowed or lost their life partner, the fear, or the guilt around opening your heart again. Now, Amy publicly gave you permission to love again, publicly and privately. But what surprised you most about dating after her loss?
Well, I didn't do a ton of dating, first of all.
Were people, wait, let me just ask you this. Were you getting like 10,000 letters from women saying, hey, I'll be your girlfriend after reading that article? Did you get like a
A
fan
lot of
club?
thousands. I don't know if there were 10, but there were a lot of them, and they weren't exactly saying precisely what you said, but some version of it.
Or did you take any of them seriously eventually? Did you ever go back to those and say, maybe I will reach out to some of these
No,
people?
no,
You didn't?
no, I didn't. And some of those correspondence were more along the lines of like sharing what they had been through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So anyway,
but
back to dating. I
yeah,
digress.
I just sort of wanted it to happen organically. And I didn't know what dating apps were or anything like that. And
Mhm.
I actually never did that either. So I did meet someone organically.
In yoga class, I'm assuming. So she's a
Well,
yoga teacher.
it's a very complicated sort of series of connections. It was not in yoga class.
Uh-huh.
This is a person who my sister-in-law, oh my God, there's so many connections. Anyway, it was someone who was it almost felt a little bit familial, you know what I mean? And so I think that really was helpful,
Yeah.
And
How did you meet? Were you fixed up?
we met at my brother-in-law and sister-in-law had a function for an organization that they support. And, she's friends with my sister-in-law. And of course I came because members of the family were there. And I knew of her. So we sort of connected there.
And so you live in Chicago, obviously. I lived in Chicago for 17 years before moving to LA. It is true. I always say that Chicago is not 6 degrees of separation like most people, but 2. Like everybody knows everybody, 2 degrees of separation. That's how I knew you and Amy, because we knew so many of this. I never knew you guys personally, but we know so many of the same people. So I understand how that could happen. And you write in the book about how, as you were starting to kind of feel ready to put yourself out there again, that you spoke to your kids about it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was an awkward conversation, but
It was? What was it like?
Well, I mean, looking back, it was awkward. It was okay.
Yeah.
It was okay doing it, but it was just, it's hard to know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But I was with someone for quite a long time who was really ill. And it was more about, for me at this moment, was more like, I would love to just sit across the table from a woman and have a great conversation and maybe share a meal, that kind of a thing. I didn't think about too far into the future,
Yeah. Yeah. And they were supportive of that.
They
And
were
then when you connected with this woman, are you married? Are you dating? Like, what's the status now?
I'm not married, but we live together and we're
Okay.
definitely partnered up. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I
Okay,
say
so-
that, it's funny because I've done a lot of podcasts and stuff, and sometimes I talk about my blank page and I neglect to talk about the relationship specifically. Not for any reason other than I think people might want to know what happens after grief.
Yeah.
and maybe
I
it's
want to talk about a little bit. I want to know, we've been talking about what happens, but I want to know, because I feel like this is a really important part, especially for people who have lost a love relationship.
yeah.
The guilt when you meet someone new, you know, as well as the excitement, right? And how you navigate that with your kids who, even if they're very supportive, I'm sure there's a part of them that it brings up grief for them, right?
Mhm.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how did you guys navigate that?
How are we currently navigating
Yeah, or how have you
it?
been? I mean, I
No,
don't know how
I'm
long
sort
you've
of being
been.
facetious, but
No, I'm sure it's an ongoing thing, but
it's
like,
an ongoing thing. It really
yeah.
is, but she's wonderful. She has a great relationship with my daughter. My boys don't live here, so it's a little different. But the short answer is, well, the reason I like to talk about it now and with you in particular is that I think it's really important for people who, like you said, have lost someone they love so much, to know that anything's possible, that to keep your heart open and your mind open for what may come, because when you're in the depths of grief, you can't think that way, you know, and to realize that people know how incredible my relationship was with Amy. There's never anything that's going to be taken away from that, and even my partner now is like, it's that's a tough act to follow, if you will.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
I was thinking. It would be hard. And I know like comparison seems almost inevitable after losing a great love.
but
Um,
I think the way to get through it is really you have to just say, this is what I want right now, and this is what I need.
mhm.
And not a young man anymore, and I want to think about the future and being with someone that I love, and I think that perspective is important for people to see and to know.
Yeah. And did you ever struggle with like because I'm just bringing up the things that I know people struggle with, and you're kind of the living example of what's possible. I know a lot of grievers will secretly wonder, like, if I deeply love someone new, does that somehow diminish the love I had before? You know, have you wrestled with that internally, or has that not really been an issue?
Oh gosh, I think you wrestle with all of those things. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sure, sure. Um, and even connecting with old friends, how are they going to react when they see you with someone new? But to be honest with you, we've been to like big weddings where I haven't seen some people that I used to be very, very good friends with, like, as a couple with Amy, and they've all just been wonderful and totally supportive. And again, it's really important for people to know that I think for the most part, people want you to be happy,
Yeah, I think
you know?
that's true. I mean, especially like sometime, my dad was a different animal, but my dad started dating 3 months after my son died
Mhm.
and got immediately into a relationship, and that was super hard for me, but also, I think weird for his community as well. When it's been several years, I think people really want that for you. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'm not saying
But
you have
you,
to
you
wait 10 years, but, maybe not
no,
3
no, no, no.
months.
Yeah. Um, I think you feel judged no matter what you're going to do,
Yeah.
and that's why I say you got to pursue what makes you happy and gives you meaning,
Yeah.
and again, I'm repeating myself, but really, if someone doesn't want you to live the rest of your life as a contributing member of society, happy,
Yes, and
then
loved.
then let's put those people to the side and
Yeah, screw
be with
them. In
other
other
people.
words. You're being much nicer. Yeah, I agree with you, and that's also one of the gifts of grief is that, when you're in such emotional pain, you develop a tolerance that I notice has sustained itself, especially for me as a recovering codependent. It's a beautiful additional gift is that, I care very little about, like, my peace and and centeredness and okayness is more important than your opinion of me.
Good for
And I
you.
can't say
Yeah.
that was true before I experienced the trauma of loss and everything that unfolded afterwards. But I feel like I noticed that with a lot of grievers.
Yeah.
I don't, it sounds like you've kind of gotten to that point too. When you've been in so much pain, you kind of are like, look, my well-being and peace, I can't give to my children and my family and my life and my work from an empty cup. I have to focus on this. Your opinions are not nearly as important.
Right. I agree. Good way to put it.
So what would you say to the person listening now who genuinely cannot imagine ever feeling alive again after loss or loving again after the loss of a partner?
Yeah, I would say that however long it takes you to deeply, deeply grieve, because that's important to
Mhm.
sit in the grief and really feel it. It won't be hard. That's the easy part. But there will be a time. It's not a magical time. It's not the first year. It's not, it's different for everybody. But there will be a time where you will experience, like that friend of mine said, moments of joy and happiness.
Yeah.
And it may surprise you, but to really lean into that, to accept it, to definitely to lean into your community, is so important,
So,
And I think that no matter how long it takes, that there is a life after loss. I should say that differently, a life with loss.
yeah, a life with loss. I like to say to people that the grief does not get smaller. It stays the same size, but we grow and expand so much bigger around it and our capacity to hold it. So it becomes a much smaller but beautiful and significant part of our lives. But it's not taking up the whole container.
Right. It's like
You
that
know?
ball of grief people are
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's really true.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think is important to share?
Well, not necessarily, but I will say that we talk about how grief affects you on milestones and things like that. And that's
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
but there are going to be random moments where you really get hit hard, and
Yes.
just expect that to happen. My son just got engaged, and it brought up
Well,
all kinds of feelings and things. And the idea of getting through that wedding is going to be hard. And at the same time, like you've been talking about, there's going to be a ton of joy and happiness and love and all of those things. But it just brings you back to so many feelings of what Amy's missing.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lifelong holding, right? We just
It
have
is.
to learn to surf it.
It is.
So that's a
Yeah.
great example. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
And a really good point. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're going to put the link to the book. My wife said, "You may want to marry me."
Thank you.
We can put the link to your foundation if you want.
I would love that. Thanks.
And
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to let people know where to find you or learn more
I
about
have
what
a website, which is just jasonbrosenthal.com, or you can find me at barharriscenter.org. That's my new gig.
your new therapeutic position?
That's right.
Very
right.
good. Congratulations on that. And you're
Thank you so
great.
much.
That's a big accomplishment. And thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. in
You're
the
very
world.
welcome. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thanks for listening and crying out loud with me. If something you heard today helped or made you feel less alone, please follow, share, and review. And for more tools and a community that deeply understands you and your pain, visit the Grief Healing Collective at drlauraberman.com/griefhealing. I'll see you next time on Crying Out Loud.
There's a hollow in my chest where your laughter used to be. Space at every table, an empty seat I see. The woman I was before you left didn't make it through, but love is still alive in me and still there between us two. They say just let it be alright, just keep your pain inside. But love this deep and pain this true were never meant to hide. So I'm crying out loud, I'm not holding it in, I'm shrinking my heart for the shape I am in. If grief is the echo of love that resounds, then I will love you crying out loud. Ooh. Some days grief's a tsunami, some days it's just a wave, some days I'm barely breathing, some days I feel so brave, but I am learning slowly what the breaking's about. The only way to freedom is feeling it out. Every tear that hits the ground is not a sign I'm weak, it's the sound of love.